Kyle, I've got the solution to our dreary, dreary evenings. We can
Bam.
we can pop a little magic mind
Ooh.
and get a little pick me up and still go to sleep, just enough to give us some clarity of mind, a little creativity, get the creative juices flowing, maybe give you one or two before the podcast, to really focus you in. What do you
You
think of
fall
that?
asleep during one podcast, and all of a sudden that's your problem.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, absolutely. The worst thing you want to do is, brew a pot of coffee at middle of the night right before a podcast.
Yeah.
Then you're up the entire evening. What you need is good, sustained energy, clarity of mind, not, a jolt of caffeine that hurts
Yeah.
your body and all these things. Absolutely. And Magic Mind does all that stuff and has that. Okay, matcha. I want to talk about matcha, Drew.
Okay. All right.
The green vegetable matcha, that buzzword, that superfood. I didn't think I'd like matcha. I
Uh-huh.
am starting to like matcha, and that's one of the big key ingredients here is that lovely green superfood that has the benefits of all the keeping you goings.
Yeah. And it's cool stuff. It's pricey,
Mm-hmm.
matcha is, but they stick it in this with some great other ingredients, all natural stuff. But you can get it through us with our code. So we want you to check out this Magic Mind elixir. Check this out. It is Go to magicmind.co/comics fun profit.
And elixir really is the perfect word for it. It's a nice little elixir. It's very cool.
Yes, for sure. If you feel you want to try this out, go to magicmind.co/comicsfunprofit and use our code. You can get 20% off of an initial one-time purchase or up to 56% off of a subscription. So if this sounds good to you, go to magicmind.co/comicsfunprofit and use our code CFP. You can get up to 56% off your subscription for the next 10 days with the code CFP, or you can just use that discount code CFP at magicmind.co/comicsfunprofit to get 20% off a one-time purchase. Just to sample, dip your toe, check it out.
Aloha, it's Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I am welcoming back a friend of the podcast, Ringo Award-winning writer David Pepose. He is here to promote The Devil That Wears My Face from Mad Cave Studios. Now, it is a 6-part limited series. The first issue when this interview is released, the first issue came out on October 3rd. Issue 2 comes out on November 22nd. The diamond code for that is SEP231853, or the lunar code is 0923MA521. David, welcome back to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to catch up, and thrilled to talk about The Devil That Wears My Face. It's a book that's been in the works for quite some time, and I'm so excited that it's finally seeing the light of day.
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more into that. These listeners, it's a very good first issue, and I can't wait to read the rest. But let me just go through some of the other stuff. David, I'm just going to go over some of your past works.
Sure.
Spencer and Locke, that listeners, I have to say, you have to pick up the first trade. Oh my God, that was incredible. David, correct me if I'm wrong. To me, it was a different take on Calvin and Hobbes, but I love it.
Thank you. I loved writing that book. For those who aren't familiar with Spencer and Locke, we built it as what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? So it's about a hard-boiled detective who is investigating the murder of his childhood sweet. His partner is a 7-foot-tall imaginary Blue Panther that was his childhood imaginary. We're very excited. We did volume 1 and we did a second volume, and we're looking forward to doing a third volume down the pike. There've been kind of some outside circumstances that have sort of kept us from doing that third volume, but we're hoping those will clear up sooner rather than later. And George Santiago Jr. and I are itching to get back to it.
Oh, that's great. Also, 2 Scouts Honor, that was great. Going to the Chapel, Savage Avengers, the Hulk annual #1 that just came out this year. The OZ, we're going to talk. I want to ask you about that a little bit later in the interview. And David has also written a number of short stories for the Marvel Black, White, and Red series, like issues Darth Vader issue #2, Moon Knight #2, Elektra #3. He is currently working on Moon Knight: City of the Dead, and he has an upcoming Marvel series, The Punisher, that will be coming out on November 8th. Now, David, where can listeners, first off, buy these issues? Where can they go on your promote your website basically so they can buy some of these issues?
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, first off, you can order many of these books through your local comic shop. Every book except for the OZ is distributed through Diamond. You can also visit my website, davidpepose.com, where I have a web store that I. But yeah, or just find me at a convention. I will be. By the time this comes out, I believe it'll be around New York Comic Con. So I'll be at New York Comic Con. So find me, buy books from me. I will gladly sign anything you buy.
And also, where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram at PeposeD. David Pepose Comics on Facebook. And my newsletter, Pep Talks, is at bit.ly/pepnews.
Okay. Now, David, I did not include this because I want to say this to you personally. Excuse me. Listeners, 2 years ago, David helped out me and Drew, the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast, because David was the first creator that reached out to us. I remember Drew had picked Scouts Honor #1. He posted that on Twitter, and you went, "Hey, if you guys want an interview, let me know." And you were the first person that I interviewed in a long format interview. Thank you very much. You were so generous and so kind, because I remember sending you messages like, "Hey, I did some stuff. I can send you my resume of who I interviewed." And you're like, "Nah, that's all right."
Don't worry about it. No, I appreciate it. I mean, look, I always say we're all in this together. Journalists and creators, I think we need each other, and so I always appreciate you taking the time, generous with your support. And all I can say is I'm glad that I kind of set the bar really low for any future guests. But I appreciate it. You've been such a tireless supporter of my work, and that means a lot. It's something that I talk about a lot with my fellow creators. It's so easy, especially when you've hit a certain level in the industry, to kind of treat creators like a monolith. And it really, we're very much, we're mom and pop shops. We're all independent contractors. It's so easy to make somebody's day by a kind word, or ruin somebody's day by just kind of a nasty tweet. And so, I've been thinking a lot lately about, like, the positive corners of the comics internet are something that's really special, and persist against all odds and all structural hurdles to the contrary. And so that's something I'm always grateful for, something I always appreciate. Because you don't get to the level that I've been fortunate enough to get at without a real village of press and retailers supporting me every step. The pleasure's all mine.
Oh, thank you very much, Dave. I'm also going to continue on that. I want to give a shout out to Frank Silva. Frank, thank you very much. Frank is from Mad Cave Studios. Frank, thank you very much for sending me an advanced copy. I'm sorry, off the cuff question, David. I forgot to write this down. Do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, no. I mean, look, the Mad Cave crew has been amazing. Frank Silva, Allison Pond, Maya Lopez, along with my editors, Christina Harrington and Mark London and Chris Fernandez, and I'm sure a whole host of people that I've left out. No, Mad Cave has been such a welcoming and wonderful place to work with. They've been so proactive on promoting this book, and it really means a lot for me as a creator to know that my publisher feels is invested in this book's success, and that they've really put their money where their mouth is in terms of promoting it. So if you're listening to this podcast, it is because of not just my efforts and Alex Cormack's efforts, but also Mad Cave as an entity's efforts to make the Devil a success. So if you're listening, call your local comic shop, ask them to order it for you if they haven't already. And hope you enjoy the book.
Also, too, thank you, David. To prepare for this interview, I got some of the information from another friend of the podcast, Chris, from the YouTube podcast Lost in Comics. He is titled Interview with David Pepose. That was dated on August 24th, 2023. If listeners, if you guys get a chance, please check out that great interview. That was a fun interview that you guys
It was
did.
very fun. Yeah, it was really fun, and it was a great way to really kind of reconnect
Yes.
with a really wonderful audience. And yeah, just get to be able to talk about some of my upcoming work. I mean, it's been a very busy 2023.
Yes.
And I've been fortunate enough to, be able to do a lot of stuff with my creator-owned work. I've been able to play in a lot of different sandboxes over at Marvel.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, it's a great way to get to talk about things like The Devil That Wears Ace, or
Mhm.
my current run on movie City of the Dead,
Mhm.
or upcoming run on Punisher.
Mhm.
Origin story for the new Punisher. Joe Garrison will be starting just in a couple of weeks after this podcast. So yeah, it was really nice to be able to catch up, and he did such a great job. He was really thoughtful with all of his questions. So
That's great. All right, David, let's just jump right in. The
do it.
Devil That Wears My Face.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask this simple question. What is the story about?
yeah. I built The Devil That Wears My Face as Face Off meets The Exorcist. It's the story of Father Franco Vieri. He's an 18th century Vatican priest who is dealing with a pretty profound crisis and so his superiors at the Vatican send him to Spain to perform an exorcism on the son of a Spanish nobleman. And the problem is the ritual backfires. And so Vieri finds himself trapped in a stranger's body,
Mhm.
while Vieri's body has been hijacked by the biblical demon Nobleman,
Mhm.
who immediately returns to the Vatican to start wreaking havoc. So it's been a really fun book. I consider it kind of a sister title spiritually to Scout's Honor in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's
Where
right.
instead of doing kind of the post-apocalyptic look at a crisis of faith, we are doing kind of a supernatural horror take on it.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a genre I've wanted to play in for quite some time, and I couldn't have asked for a better project to start working in horror with, and I couldn't have asked for better collaborators. Alex Cormack from Road of Bones and Sea of Sorrows,
Mhm.
and Cage and Breath of Shadows and Sync, just to name a few of his prolific talents. He's doing the art on the book, and he's doing the work of his career on, I think.
Mhm.
Justin Birch is our letterer, who I've worked with on a number of this. Absolutely just slamming it out of the park. And yeah, working with my editors, Mike Martz and Christina Harrington, who they were my editors in Scout's Honor back at Aftershock. And it's so nice to be able to work with them again. They Christina especially was just kind of getting to know me together, and now
Okay.
she's one of my favorite editors. I consider her a good friend, and
Mhm.
just I love working with her. And Mike I've known since I was a college student, so it's been nice kind of going full circle with him
Mhm.
as my career has taken on. So yeah, just a really fun book, that sort of, it is about kind of examining what happens when you have a crisis of faith,
Mhm.
and ultimately, truth is really the antidote to
Yes.
all of that.
Mhm.
But sometimes facing that truth can be challenging, and but the refusal to stare the truth in the face, that is really kind of the engine that keeps this game of cat and mouse going. And yeah, so lots of fun historical horror action for our readers, and I don't think there's anything else in the stands like The Devil That Wears, and I can't wait for readers to get to check it out.
The other I want to ask, I'm going to jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
Was there a reason why you placed the story in the 1800s and in Spain?
Yeah.
That was interesting.
So, I wanted this to be a historical thriller, just because this is a body swap story, and so there's a lot of sort of, it's a story about mistaken identity and sort of these two characters trying to kind of one up each other. It's a little bit of cat and mouse, and so once you add in like electronics, that really kind of adds that throws a wrench into that dynamic in a way that I think is it runs very counter to what I would want. You don't want to have to deal with electronics and things like that cuts against the tone that I was searching for. So I did research on the Vatican and every single pope
Mm-hmm.
that existed. Trying to find like the right one. Pope Clement, who was the Pope in our series, that he was actually the Pope, in 1740.
Mm-hmm.
That's the year he died. And things are, I thought it was a great representation of a church in decline.
Yes.
Pope Clement in reality, just like he is in our book, he's blind and bedridden. He's kind of on death's door. He's performing the Pope's duties to some extent. Also, at that point, the Vatican, their finances were in shambles.
Yes.
There was a lot of competition in terms of people, in terms of just religion. I mean, the Freemasons were kind of an up and coming movement. It struck me as the perfect time to kind of represent the Vatican as a titan that is on a precarious perch right now. The whole climate feels a little bit like a powder keg, and maybe this is the spark that a lot of fun on that one.
I'm going to talk a little bit, but I'm trying not to spoil too much, but because you drop hints because Father Vieri, it's not just I lost my faith in God. It's there's the church has their own agenda. And I think Father Vieri sees like, wait a minute, I thought we're supposed to serve a higher purpose and not,
Well, yeah, I mean, the Vatican, especially back then, was just as much a political entity as it was a religious entity.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, something that we deal a lot with in our series, is that it's called the Curia, which is kind of the Pope's inner circle. You're dealing with like the head of the College of Cardinals, you're dealing with the head of the Inquisition, the Secretary of State, sort of core people like that. And with the Pope kind of all but absentee, these are the skeleton crew that are kind of really running things at the Vatican. And that is kind of a really fun gauntlet for Legion to be running.
Yes.
That is that, without spoiling too much, Vieri is sort of the protege of one of these cardinals, and that's why he's sort of had this unique access, and everybody kind of sees as considered Vieri to at most be his mentor's pet. Kind of meek and sort of keeps to himself, and Legion is never going to keep to himself, and so that's been a lot of fun with this series, is kind of seeing like some of these characters kind of taking a beat, being like, whoa, like Vieri's like really really acting out. And then of course their preconceptions are like, nah, that's just whatever, like this couldn't be anything sinister. And that's like the perfect cover for this, is that nobody expects Vieri to do anything out of the ordinary. And so that's going to be a big through line in this book, is the church is not just a religious entity, it's a political entity as well. And Vieri is not great at playing that game. Legion's a lot better suited.
Oh my God. Okay. One character I want to ask about is Maria. Is she going to play a key role in the story?
Yes, 100%. She is really kind of Vieri's foil throughout this whole series. Maria, for those who haven't read the book, she's an attendant for Hugo Azan, who is sort of the Spanish nobleman whose son, Santiago, winds up sort of becoming this unwitting cage for Vieri's soul. And Maria is going to kind of be the make or break for Vieri. Nobody is going to believe Vieri when he says, I'm a priest and I'm trapped in this guy's body. They're just going to assume this is the devil, who's possessed this guy, just saying more nonsense. Like we got to cast him out. And Maria might be the first one to sort of be like, this feels different. Like he might be, is he telling the truth? Vieri and Maria's dynamic really is kind of like, is one of the through lines of the whole series. She really, she makes or breaks a lot of his, and without spoiling too much, there's something about her that kind of acts as a little bit of an equalizer. Legion has really stacked the deck because he's able to kind of navigate the Vatican unseen, and he's also still got all the powers of his demonic heritage. And meanwhile, Vieri, without spoiling too much, is kind of saddled with all the weaknesses and none of the strengths. And so Maria is going to have to be kind of the one who helps even the odds a little bit for him. And so watching them team up against this kind of larger than life threat, it's really fun, and it's kind of a nice way to add to make sure that we have like a strong female character in this book.
Yes.
Yeah, Maria, she rises to the occasion quite often. She wound up being a very fun character.
Okay, oh, that's so cool. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Now, actually, let me preface this next question. Now, I love the title of the book. Because, sometimes we hear, like how we hear, and I remember you're a reporter at one time, it's how sometimes we hear all these horrific crimes, and sometimes we'll hear either a friend or the family will say like, but they seem like a nice person. How did you guys come up with this title for the book?
Yeah, boy, I'm trying to remember since we got that title. That might have actually, as we asked it, I think that may have been Mad Cave may have suggested that title.
Okay.
As we were sort of hashing out ideas for it, I think that was their contribution, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a cool title, and that really kind of I think galvanized the whole project in a way. Yeah, I think it speaks to what the book is about. It feels evocative in a certain way, and and I feel like it's a trend that I'm not necessarily naturally suited for. Where you see there's something is killing the children is a great example, or what's the furthest place from here, sort of these longer, more evocative titles. And so it was kind of cool to get out of my comfort zone, and where I'm usually doing kind of punchier 2 or 3 word titles, to do something a little longer and a little more baroque. It was fun.
Okay, that's so cool. Okay, you mentioned that Mad Cave was the one that contributed to the title. How did you team up with Mad Cave Studios?
Yeah, so Mark London and Chris Fernandez at Mad Cave, they've been fans for a long of my work, even dating back to Spencer and Locke. And so we've talked for a number of times over the years, and we were talking about like trying to find the right project to work on together. And, we hadn't really found like the right timing and the right project to collaborate on. And it was about, by the time this interview, it was about 2 years ago.
Wow.
That they were like, hey, listen, like we're making a really big push to expand Mad Cave. They said they were doing Steve Orlando and Chris Sabella, who are 2 creators I really respect, and both as creators. And I was like, you know what, like, yeah, like let's do something. And so we were kind of batting ideas around, and we all really kind of locked on Devil. It's kind of like, all right, that feels like a cool way to go about doing. And just then, over the course of the development of this book, it took a while to kind of get this book together, because I was juggling this along with my Marvel output. Marvel had just brought me on to work on Savage Avengers, and so we were kind of working on that. And so as I was putting scripts together, we said, who would be like a great artist to work on this book? Like, I love Alex Cormack. I've been a fan of his since his work on Sync, Comics Tribe, and I've gotten to be friendly with him through our mutual friend Rich Duick, who Alex has done the majority of his work with. And so Chris and Mark were like, oh, we love Alex. Do you know him? Would you be able to reach out? And so, and Alex, seemed very excited about the concept. And so it really was a win-win. And as we were really the only thing that kind of, the only reason that it took a little while to start was we just needed to fit in Alex's schedule. Alex is a monstrously prolific artist. He's the guy who's like often working on like 3 projects at once, and yet he doesn't like skip a beat in terms of quality. I mean, he really, I call him a unicorn all the time, because I've never worked with an artist as talented and fast and gracious as him. He really is just so. So we just needed Alex's schedule to open up. as Alex's schedule opened up shortly before that, Mike Martz and Christina Harrington joined the company.
Awesome.
And like I said, I've known Mike
Mhm.
since I was in college. I interned for him back when he was at DC.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've known him for ages. And Christina, I loved working with her on Scouts Honor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of like, it felt like fate, that the whole team was kind of coming together in such a
Yes.
strong way. And Justin Birch, both Alex and I had worked with him on various projects. Justin's worked with us a lot on his work over at IDW. And meanwhile, I had worked with Justin. I'd worked with him on an anthology story as well as a graphic novel that hasn't been yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked with with Justin for some time. And yeah, it's just honestly having that team, it really, I don't think I've ever worked on a project that has flowed this seamlessly.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to the talent of everyone. I think we're all just we're all rowing in the same direction. I think
Yes.
we feel very strongly about the vision of this book, and yeah, it's made for a project that I couldn't be prouder of, and it's one that it does kind of feel like a return to my roots.
Yes.
I'm very excited for people to see.
Oh yes, it's great. Speaking of Alex's art, I love the art style in the book. I love the color. He did now. Correct me if I'm wrong. He did the colors, right?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Alex is a one-man band. He can do. He knows how to do everything, including the lettering. But we're trying not to kill him on that one. So
yeah.
we'll turf that to Justin. But yeah, Alex, I did an interview with him recently where he'd said that he'd got to start working animation, and that he really enjoyed storyboards, and that he wound up winning a contest that Jim Zub was throwing for Skull Kickers, and that was his comics work. But he told me, he said, like he studied fine arts, and so he knew just how to do like paints. And so seeing the way that he tackles that, it's a really cool holistic way of approaching a comics page. And he works digitally, so he's also very nimble in terms of I just had a page in Devil number 3 where I was like, hey, this one panel here, I'm realizing like we could set something else up here instead. Would you mind, instead of having like a shot on this guy's face, we this other thing instead? And so gracious about it, even though I was asking him to do it at sort of the 11th hour. So yeah, he really is just so technically proficient and just and such a gracious collaborator. I probably make him uncomfortable during podcasts with him where I gas him up the whole time. But he really is. Alex is the real deal, and Bram Stoker Award-nominated artist, and he deserves it 100,000%. If there's any justice in this world, with the work that he's putting out in 2023, hopefully he will win that award next year.
That'd be nice. Now, listeners, I have never seen The Exorcist, but when I saw Father Vieri, Alex's design, to me, I thought he looked similar to Father Damien Karras, the priest in the Exorcist movie. That was played by the late actor Jason Miller. Now, David, correct me if I'm wrong. Am I reading too much into this, or did you guys talk about, Father Vieri's character design? Because as soon as I saw his face,
we talked a lot about the character designs. I mean, Alex really took like kind of the preliminary notes that I threw at him and took the ball and really ran with it. I know, like, we talked a lot about Vieri's design. We talked a lot about Legion's design. And we went through every single character. And what's funny is that the way that we kind of went about doing it is oftentimes the final designs wound up incorporating elements usually from 2 different designs. Alex would usually send me 3 or 4 headshots per character. And I would say, hey, what if we took this first one, but we took the hair from the second one or something like that, or the eyes. I wound up actually taking every single design and kind of Rubik's cubing them on Photoshop just to be like, what like seems to click for me. And that was like a really fun collaborative way of going about it. For Vieri, I know a big inspiration for me that I talked about early on was Hamish Linklater from Midnight Mass. Sort of
Okay.
this guy who, like, he doesn't look super assuming, but
Mhm.
like kind of turn on a dime pretty quick, and
Mhm.
he could still support being the villain of the piece visually. So yeah, we talked about that. I know Santiago's look evolves quite a bit over this
Okay.
as you meet him, as you see him initially as Legion's victim. He looks like a wild man.
Yes. Mhm.
Whereas by the time that Vieri makes his Count of Monte Cristo escape, uh,
Mhm.
Santiago cleans up.
Yes.
So we'll kind of see how that look evolves, and then meanwhile, kind of having the Cardinals and sort of figuring out how can we shorthand their qualities in a visual sense.
Mhm.
So Vieri's mentor, Cardinal Pentecost, like, he seems like kind of a stand-up, straight-up dude, whereas like Cardinal Mancini, who's the head of the Inquisition, like,
Yes.
how can we make him look like the jerk that he is,
Yes.
in visual shorthand, or Cardinal Fortunato, the kind of scheming Secretary of State. How do we, kind of convey that just in the character design?
Yes.
Alex is so talented at the acting of it all. And
Yes.
that was something that really struck me even more than the way that he tackles mood and the way that he's tackled, varying degrees of violence in this book.
Mhm.
The acting, he really seems to relish that, which I think is such a cool thing. And so, yeah, these characters, Alex did such a great job, and he was very thoughtful about the whole process.
Mhm.
He and I talked a lot at length about what the final designs for all these characters would look like, and
Mhm.
yeah, I'm really happy with how they all turned out.
Yeah, it's great. It really is. Um, Before I start moving on to other questions, listeners, I want to mention Alex's work on the colors, the mood of it sets the mood and the tone of how creepy this book is. Um, Even the scenes in the Vatican look it doesn't look bright. It just looks um a little dreary. It looks a little I shouldn't say dreary, but it doesn't look that bright. It doesn't look like angelic or brightness. It's like it's
Right.
always a little bit of a shadow, and I love that scene.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think yeah, it's all Alex. We talked a lot of just how do we maintain the mood of
Yes.
this. Um, and yeah, I think Alex really is walking a tightrope in terms of, how do you make sure that the action is clear,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but at the same time, how do you sort of make everybody feel a little uncomfortable, keep them on the.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, so far he's done such an excellent job. Yeah, yeah. So far we've just finished up the art on the first half of this. By the time when we've done this interview, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure by the time that this interview goes live, we'll be much further along than that.
Mm-hmm.
And just every page is just a real showstopper. Christina and I were just talking about that actually for issue 3, and it's just, yeah, Alex is the real deal. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so like you mentioned, that part of the premise of the story came from the movie Face Off.
Yes.
Now, those who have seen the movie, Nicolas Cage plays the incredible Castor Troy.
Yes.
Now, of course, and whoever's seen the movie has got to remember the famous scene where he's dressed up as a priest who is loud and obnoxious, and he's just like dancing. Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
Now, may I ask if you can tell our listeners and if hopefully I got this correct, that
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, you met Nicolas Cage real briefly, or you had an interaction. Please tell that
That's
story.
funny. Yeah, that's funny. That's a funny story. Yes, I did. It was about 16 years ago, I guess. Actually a little, yeah, 16 and a half years ago. I was in college. Yeah, I was an intern at Focus Features. It was the summer between my senior year. It's the first time I lived in Los Angeles, and so one of the perks of that job is we were able to take golf carts around the back lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember one day I drove to the backlot commissary wearing a Green Lantern shirt, which is kind of a no-no. Green Lantern, Warner Brothers owned, but I was an intern, and my bosses didn't know any better, and it was laundry day. And so I remember I went to the commissary, and I had ordered a hot dog, and I was mid-bite. I was about to eat this hot dog, and we're just outside in the commissary. That's not like an indoor thing. And I see something come out of the corner of my eye, and it's another golf cart pulling up, and it's Nicolas Cage behind the wheel. And as I'm sitting there with this hot dog, and I kind of make eye contact. I'm like, ugh. And I hear him shout, "Go Green Lantern!" And then he just drives off, faster than I thought any golf cart could ever drive. And so yeah, that was my close encounter with Nicolas Cage. It's my best Hollywood celebrity story. And yeah, made me a fan for life. So if you're listening, I'm a fan, and I'm happy to send you any of my books that you'd like, Nicolas Cage. But yeah, I think that certainly got me on my Nicolas Cage fandom. Huge fan of his filmography, especially his '90s work. I love Face Off, The Rock, Leaving Las Vegas, Finding Arizona. There's so much. I mean, he's prolific. Drive Angry, The Wicker Man. Some of these you love more ironically than others, but like I love that he always puts the pedal to the metal in terms of acting and sometimes scenery. And but yeah, Face Off is my favorite.
Oh yes.
And that is something that every time I write a book, I always kind of have a to-do list of just things I'd love to do over the course of my career, things that interest me, in terms of pop culture, in terms of narrative tools. And the thing is that every time I finish a book, I've checked a couple of things off my list, but I seem to have added more. I've watched something new, or I've read something new, or I'm like, that's an interesting twist. Let me see if I can, use that in my own work somewhere. Face Off has been kind of on the bucket list for a long time. I love the body swap stories.
Yes.
Really, it's a great way of sort of, you have to boil down two characters into very identifiable archetypes before you turn everything on its head. You literally you switch their bodies. In a film sense, it's a fun acting challenge. But even in the comic sense, you have to kind of be like, okay, like these characters now look very different from one another. How do you make them maintain that character in them, even if it's a totally different body? And I love that it sort of puts both of these characters on their heels a little bit. They're both fishes out of water, and it's sort of, they're each trying to kind of one up each other. It really is a chess match.
Oh yes.
Where one of them will make a move, and the other one has to make a counter move, and if they don't, then the other person's going to get even further ahead. And between that, and then I've always wanted to write horror, and so the idea of being able to do a horror version of that Face Off body swap, that's really fun for me. And so this I think has been sort of the most check or box checkiest of books that I've done in some time, where I'm just like, I want to do that. Okay, great. And Alex has been nice and game for all of it. But yeah, it's I certainly my love of Face Off shows through. I think in the book. And I think that early image of Castor Troy disguised as a priest.
Yes.
I think that was a huge inspiration for the whole series, because the amount of access and the amount of the reach that the Catholic Church has and the Vatican has. That's a cool way to kind of really raise the stakes. It's things are going to get rough for Vieri and company, and hopefully it won't span the course of Europe.
Oh, that's going to be so cool. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. So, all right, David, I'm sorry, I'm going to move on because I want to also point listeners to some of your other Marvel works, Avengers Unlimited, because you've written, now this is only exclusive to the Marvel Unlimited, the Infinity Comics, Avengers Unlimited. You wrote the first 6 issues of this called The Black Ledger with artist Farid Karami,
Yeah.
And then also too, you did a follow-up of you also did another Avengers Unlimited story, Casino Andromeda, with artist Zay Carlos, and that was from issues 43 to 48. So may I just ask, for the listeners, can you tell what these 2 stories are about?
Yeah. So those were so fun. I've been a huge Avengers fan since, for at least 15, 20 years. I love the characters so much. And I think it's because it's like you're able to throw together Marvel's coolest characters into one adventure and watch them play off of each other.
Yes.
And I grew up reading like Grant Morrison's Justice JLA, and that was very similar on the DC side of things. And I think it was around, honestly, I attribute it a lot to like Brian Bendis's run and CU that like it really kind of galvanized that feeling for me for the Marvel side of things. Or even really it's Jeff Johns and Olivia Coipel's Red Zone arc. That was my favorite of it growing up. So when I worked on Savage Avengers and we announced it, I had said like I've wanted to write Avengers for ages. I taught myself how to write with Avengers fan scripts, and and on that roster I had Cloak, Dagger, and Daredevil as Avengers. So it was very fun when Savage Avengers came about and I was able to have them on that team.
That's right. Yes.
So when that book came out, I said, I've wanted to write Avengers since I was 22, and I love the character so much. And I like to think that my editor Tom Brevoort saw that, and so they were launching this new vertical on Marvel Unlimited. They had done Spider-Man or Spider-Verse Unlimited, and they'd done X-Men Unlimited with Jonathan Hickman, and they were launching one with Avengers. And so Tom's like to be the opening arc, and I said, the ability to launch 2 Avengers titles in the same year, like pinch me. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, for the Black Ledger, I really kind of wanted to do sort of an entry point Avengers story. For those who maybe you haven't read Jason Aaron's run, or maybe you haven't read like any of the major comics runs, but you're familiar with the characters from, say, pop culture at this point. I wanted to do a story that kind of spoke to that. So I kept, very much a core roster. Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and She-Hulk. And then Nick Fury pops up towards the end. But the arc is somebody has taken. Nick Fury has made plans to take care of the Avengers if something has gone on, and somebody has unleashed those plans. And so all of the Avengers are kind of finding themselves hyper targeted. So Steve Rogers, for example, gets injected with the Infinity Formula, which does not play nice with the super soldier serum. Or Iron Man gets locked in his suit, and all the Avengers security thinks that he's an intruder in Tony Stark's suit, and so they're all gunning him down. And so it was a really kind of fun way to just kind of play off the different pairings of these events. That's something Tom and I talked about early on, was to kind of take the old Silver Age Justice League approach, which is, you have all the characters together and then you split them off, and half the fun is seeing, for me, it was like, oh, if I never get to write Captain America and Iron Man again, I want to write them together. But also like Thor and Black Panther, who are 2 characters rooted in their respective mythologies. How do they kind of play off of each other, which is not a dynamic that I've seen a whole lot of comics, whereas Thor is the thunder god, Black Panther is all about subtlety and stealth. Those 2 might not necessarily think the highest of each other as a result. So that wound up being really fun, and Farid and I, we've worked together before on some creator-owned work that so when Tom said, hey, so let me introduce Farid Karami, who's going to be handling the lion's share of this arc, I was like, I know him. That's why he had to say he needed to take a little pause in our creator-owned work, along with working with Alan Robinson and David Tinto, both of whom are just Alan especially is just a real sweetheart, just a salt of the earth. And David is just fantastic. He did another Avengers Unlimited arc recently with Tim Seeley that I read, that was really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was like a really fun story to put together. Casino Andromeda, that one was so much fun because I really kind of, I think, got to stretch my muscles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We did a team up between the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That there was a rogue super weapon that was up for grabs at a space casino,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the Avengers kind of trying to be more proactive, going undercover to try to recover this weapon. And it turns out that the Guardians have gotten the same intel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it starts off with them kind of butting heads over, trying to secure this weapon, and
Mm-hmm.
finding out that there's actually 4 of them. And so
Yeah.
the team ended up splitting up again. And that was, I think, really fun. I knew that there was a Guardians movie coming out.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had pitched that. I think it was the summer before Guardians 3 came out.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a little bit of a runway for it. And I was thinking, like, okay, like, let's reverse engineer this a little bit. You have the leader in Peter Quill.
Mm-hmm.
But Peter Quill, especially over the his the way that most people see him in greater pop culture is sort of a little bit more of Arrested Development. How would he go up against sort of the more rigid military discipline of somebody like Carol Danvers?
Mm-hmm.
Or Black Panther, who's sort of the methodical stealth guy.
Yeah.
Maybe playing him off of Gamora would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Drax the Destroyer is kind of the big gun of the Guardians. Well, who's the biggest gun in the Avengers arsenal? Well, it's War Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then having like all the thieves together, having Rocket and Groot teaming up with Ant-Man. It was really, it was so much fun. And I think for me, what's so exciting about these stories is you figure out your initial pairings. Just what's the pairing that's like most exciting for you that you want to most into. But then for me, I usually, the way that I've tended to do it is, the last 2 chapters, I bring the teams together.
Yes.
And so then it's just reshuffling the pairs all over again, figuring out, okay, like what's a cool secondary pairing that you wouldn't think of.
Yeah.
So, like one that kind of that speaks to mind is, like Carol Danvers, like, feeding Groot with solar energy.
Mm-hmm.
Or, a really fun moment was we got to homage that classic Avengers cover with Ant-Man riding on Hawkeye's bow and arrow.
Yeah.
We got to do that with Gamora, firing like a Kree arrow. And, being able to kind of draw on, like, Marvel Cosmic is such an interesting kind of Wild West corner of that universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as built out in the way that, say, DC's space which makes sense because, if you had a character at DC who, like, you didn't really want to, like, go in depth on their origin, they're an alien. Whereas I think at Marvel, if you have a character that, like, you just want a default origin, they're terrestrial, they're usually a mutant. And so Marvel's space corridors are like a little bit more, you've got sort of like the Jack Kirby influence stuff, and then you have all these sorts of things that have not necessarily found a lot of cross-pollination. And that was a real treat in that story. I was like, okay, like, who are some villains we can throw in here? Let's throw in Death's Head. Let's throw in
that's right.
High Evolutionary. Can we throw in the Fraternity of Raptors? I love the Fraternity of Raptors. I pitch them way more often than I should. Okay, we got to have these, the 2 kind of brawlers, together. Who could they fight up against? Okay, let's have them fight against the Blood Brothers. Ego the Living Planet, and he's got like a nest of Sidri aliens inside him. Great. And I really have to thank Tom Brevoort. He's been my editor in the majority of my Marvel work, and just a wonderful guy to work. And I give him a lot of credit and a lot of gratitude that usually I pitch him stuff that I'm like, this is too weird, right? And he invariably, as long as the characters are available and it fits within the runway of the story, he's never told me no. The weirder the ideas, the more encouraging he is about them. And it's one reason of many that I love working with. But yeah, Casino Andromeda was such a fun story to work with. And Zay Carlos just was game for all of it. Really talented guy. I think he did a fantastic job with I love that story. I feel like that one maybe got a little overlooked when it came out. But I was so proud of it. So Yeah, I feel like Casino Andromeda in many ways felt like a spiritual successor to Savage Avengers for me. It felt
Yeah.
like it's taking the craziest stuff in the Marvel universe I can find and like throwing it all into the same plate.
Yeah.
So yeah, really fun story to write.
So listeners, if you have Marvel Unlimited, please check out David's stories on Avengers Unlimited. You know, they are fun stories. Please don't get wrapped up in, well, this is not continuity. Just have fun with it. Like, you know, it's really fun to read. All right. I'm going to ask you about the OZ. Now, for listeners, what is the story about? Because I've read the first issue. I still have my second issue Kickstarter in the boxes in the back, you know, but I love the OZ. The first issue is incredible. Yes.
I'm very excited for that. You know, it's so funny. Somebody literally just asked me about the OZ this morning, so I was able to talk about that a little on Twitter. But yeah, the OZ, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's Mad Max meets the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
It stars Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who's an Iraq War veteran who's grappling with disillusionment, and she's been hearing her ailing grandmother's stories about Oz for years, and she's always assumed that they were a fairy tale. Unfortunately, a tornado hits, and this new Dorothy finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. It's now known as the Occupied Zone, which is Z. And Dorothy finds out that Grandma killing 2 wicked witches in a week and then splitting is not a happy ending. That's basically Baghdad all over again, a power vacuum. And so our new Dorothy has to kind of reunite various members of her grandmother's former friends to try to bring peace to the occupied zone. And suffice to say, one of those old friends has really turned into kind of a tyrant. So yeah, I feel like it's been such a fun series. I think out of every book that I've ever done, that might be, especially in the creator-owned side, I think that's the one I'm the proudest of. Ruben Rojas is doing such a terrific job on the art, and Whitney Kogar is just the perfect colors for him, and Dave Hopkins does such a magnificent job at making my dialogue work. So it really is the perfect creative team. So yeah, I think it's the series. It's taken a little longer for the third issue to come out than I wanted. It's been written for quite some time. I finished writing the series before we launched the first Kickstarter. But just like, you know, life happens. You know, we wanted to make sure that we had like a good amount of art from Ruben and Whitney before we did a Kickstarter. Like every Kickstarter's had 11 pages of art. To show people, just to make sure people know that we're being serious about it. And I don't want to keep anybody waiting any longer than we'd have to. So Ruben is almost half finished with the inks on this third issue. And Whitney is working hard on the colors. I know she's got a lot on her plate deadline wise as well. So we're probably looking at sometime in 2024 for a launch on that. I would say my goal is maybe March of 2024. You know, it's one of those things. Once you go too deep into October, it kind of becomes a no man's land. I think for doing a Kickstarter that has the reach that I think this book deserves. So I think between like November and January is not really a time that I'd want to hit. And so yeah, I would say probably March. You know, knock on wood. I mean, I think by then we'll have even more art to show. You know, hopefully by then Ruben will be done with, if not done, mostly done, and that way we don't have to keep anybody waiting any longer than they have to for this book. But I can tell you, Ruben's art is looking fantastic. You know, for those who haven't caught up on the first 2 issues, you know, Dorothy's really had to find her place as a general in the occupied zone, and the mission has been to find the Silver Slippers, which are kind of almost an interdimensional weapon of mass in the wrong hands, because you know, you click your heels and you wind up in another dimension, and that's what kind of the despotic forces of the this war machine to continue forever across all dimensions, ever conquering. And so Dorothy is trying to kind of stop that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
some of this is it's not turning out the way she'd hoped.
Mm-hmm.
So our third issue is kind of our big climactic finale.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And if you let's just say issue 2 ended kind of on a cliffhanger.
Okay.
We're not going well for Dorothy and company.
Mm-hmm.
So she's gonna have to find her way out of a pretty precarious situation in issue 3 before the big final battle. So yeah, I'm really happy with the book. I can't wait for the whole thing to be done.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's meant so much to me to see the support from all of our readers.
Yes.
The fact that we won a Ringo Award off of that book.
That's great. Yeah.
The readers got us there.
Mm-hmm.
So I anybody listening, our Yellow Brick Road Warriors, like we have stuff coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't wait for people to get to read this big finale.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are just getting to discover my work, whether it's through Devil or whether it's through my Marvel work, I'm so proud of the OZ, and I can't wait for people to check out our big finale.
And listeners, I read the first issue. I love it. It's great. David, I'm going to move on because I'm going to start wrapping things up. Can I ask you, first off, I want to ask about Ruby, your pet dog. How's she doing?
She's doing great. Thank you for asking. Ruby's in daycare right now. She's wonderful. She just turned 3 this week. So she's a sweet kid. She's just kind of my little writer's assistant goblin. She's still got that puppy energy. So is not quite as chill as our last dog Holly was. Holly would just be supportive and let me write. Ruby needs a little bit more playtime, but she's such a sweet kid that very enthusiastic. She never does anything halvesies. She's always if she's enthusiastic, she's very enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm. She's
doing wonderful. Thank you for asking.
No, because I know every so often you would post pictures of Ruby. Here's Ruby. I got a picture from daycare. This is how Ruby's day is going. Or, okay, here's a picture of Ruby not letting me write today. Sorry, Tom. My other manager. But those are cute pictures. Yes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, she's a real sweet kid. And so I good dog. She just likes to cuddle up against me while I write all day, every day. And couldn't have asked for a cuter dog.
2 more questions. I know you mentioned you're going to be at New York Comic Con, probably around this time when the interview airs. Any other conventions after that, or store signings?
That'll be my last show of the year. I am coordinating a store signing in Denver at I Want More Comics and Games. Date TBD. I was going to be doing it in after Comic-Con in San Diego, and I caught COVID and had to postpone.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So we're in the process of hammering out a date for that now.
Mm-hmm.
Probably will be shortly after New York Comic-Con. But once I know more, I will get that all squared away. And those are my last shows of the day of the year. I will be doing some signings in Los Angeles. Anybody who's listening, when Punisher comes out on November 3rd, I think is the date. Whatever that first Wednesday of November is. I'll be doing signings at Jeffrey's Comics and Collectors Paradise. Oh no, it's on the 8th. Sorry.
Okay, I was just trying to make sure.
And I'll be doing a signing at Golden Apple Comics on November 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So find me there. Otherwise, I think my next store signing or my next con signing will be C2E2. So
okay.
Find me in Chicago.
Yeah. All right. Any closing words to our listeners?
Yeah. I think it's just if you like horror books, I really think Devil is the Devil That Wears My Face. It's unlike anything that's on the stands right It's such a fun mix. If you're a fan of Face Off or The Exorcist or The Count of Monte Cristo, it's such a fun book. And I will say I want to give a shout out to Alex's other Halloween work that's coming out, Drive Like Hell, over at Dark Horse with our pal Rich Duick. So if you pre-order both of those books, you'll get a nice Halloween double feature. But yeah, I think anybody listening, we always appreciate the support, especially with an up and coming publisher like Mad Cave.
Yes.
They're looking to kind of make their mark. I'm looking to make sure that people who only know me from my superhero work, they see that there are other gears that I can write in. I'm super proud of this book. I think it's as strong as any creator-owned work I've done. And no small part to Alex's virtuosic artwork. So call your local comic shop, ask them to order you The Devil That Wears My Face. You can also visit Mad Cave's website. I know they have a subscription service as well. Like we said earlier, follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram at Pepose D, David Pepose Comics on Facebook, bit.ly/Pep News for my newsletter, or just davidpepose.com.
David, mahalo. Thank you in Hawaiian. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me another opportunity to interview you. I wish you all the success for your two new series, The Devil That Wears My Face and the new upcoming Punisher series that's going to come out on November 8th. I also want to thank Frank of Mad Cave Studios. Frank, thank you very much for sending me an advanced copy. If you are a new comic book fan or a lifelong comic book fan who loves a good horror story, please check out The Devil That Wears My Face. Now, the first issue came out on October 3rd. Issue 2 comes out on November 22nd. The diamond code for that is SEP231853 or lunar code 0923MA521. Now, I read the first issue. I love it. It's a great story. It has a lot of depth to it, and I can relate and connect to Father Vieri. That he's a great character. And I can't wait to see how the rest of the series is going to go. And the art and the color by Alex it's incredible. It gives that very creepy vibe to the book. It does. I want to thank Drew, the Coast of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys. Aloha.
Time for a break from our show to pay the bills. Check out beacons.ai/comicsfunprofit for all the C4 FAP links you could ever need, all in one place. You can provide feedback, listen, support, share, enjoy these. We have our Patreon there. You can buy us a beer or a coffee. You can check out our Instagrams, our Twitters, our Facebooks. Check out our YouTube page. You can email us. You can listen to our podcasts on Patreon, if you're a subscriber, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on Podbean. We have Google Podcasts on there. We have an Amazon wish list. You want to buy Kyle and I something? Fine. You can do that here. We appreciate it. We have Kyle's RPG podcast listed on there, so you can check out his Dork Day afternoon offerings. We have Cowabunga links, so you can check out the Cowabunga deep discount FOC and pre-order list. Get on that. That's RLCS, so you can check that out as well. And we want to just give you opportunities to say hi, to check out what we're doing, support us if you would like, or just listen. Check out beacons.ai/comicsfunprofit for all the C4 FAP links you could ever need. Thanks. Back to the show. As you know, RLCS is Cowabunga Comics, Lake Country, Wisconsin's best pop culture destination for new comics, back issues, gaming, retro video games, vinyl, and figures. Give them a call, 262-569-9999. Check them out online at cowabungacomics.com or follow them on Twitter at Incredicow. They are our LCS, and we utilize their deep discount mail order service to bring Oconomowoc, Wisconsin closer to us. They'll take care of you. Tell them Drew and Kyle sent you. Say hi to Eric and James from us. If you need an LCS, you can't go wrong with Cowabunga Comics.